friends, it's Kristine with Queen City Stamp Art, and I'm back today to share a very pretty, clean and simple card using the Nature's Harvest Bundle from Stampin' Up. So the Nature's Harvest Bundle is part of the Harvest Meadow Suite from the July to December Stampin' Up mini catalog, and that can be found on page 54 of the catalog. It's a beautiful suite of product. There's some gorgeous papers and some really fun like crocheted ribbon and some beautiful brush metallic embellishments and this really fun cork specialty paper. There's also a new time-worn type 3D embossing folder, which is kind of cool. But we're just going to be using today the Nature's Harvest bundle from this suite. And I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful, clean and simple card. So in addition to the stamp set and the coordinating dies, we're going to be using the Timber 3D embossing folder. This is also in the July to December mini catalog with one of the other suites, but you can of course purchase it separately. So anyway, this is beautiful and it will add some fun texture to our background. We're going to be using ink colors in Smoky Slate, Early Espresso, and a little bit of Rich Razzleberry. And to color today, this video will take a tiny bit longer because we're going to be coloring with the Stampin' Up! Watercolor pencils. So I have the pencils and I have one of our water painters. So we're going to be painting a little bit today. So I'm going to set these aside for now and pull out our supplies. So we're going to need, I cut myself a little piece of watercolor paper, and this is our background. So let's put the background together. So we're going to just add a little bit of adhesive. This is that Timber 3D embossing folder. It's really pretty. I'm not sure if you can see the texture on that, but it's very natural, and I love using, hold on with this adhesive. I love using natural backgrounds whenever I'm doing a kind of a nature-y card. Get a refill here for my tape runner. Okay, back in business now. I like to put adhesive all the way around the edges when I'm using an embossed panel because a lot of times it will kind of pop up on the side. So I just started this one with a top folding, so 11 by 4 1/4 inch base card, scored at 5 1/2 inches, and I'm just going to layer on this beautiful embossed panel as our background. So now that's all set. I also die cut a couple of, the die set has some extra pieces that you can die. So it will die cut the shaped images. So this floral and this floral, it will die cut. There's also some nice label shapes for the sentiments. And then we've got a few extra foliage dies that are very, very pretty just on their own that can be cut and colored separately using watercolor or pastels, a lot of different things. So we're gonna need this piece anyway, so I'm gonna take that out, and I cut the sentiment panel using one of the little panel dies, and then these are the extra pieces. So there's a lot of really nice die shapes in this particular bundle that are a little bit extra that you can use for embellishments on your card and even to create some texture like I'm doing with these. So I die cut them in white. And I'm just going to get my silicone mat out here, and I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on the back of these. And I'm using my mat because the silicone mat makes this adhesive work better. It just gives it the right amount of drag to get the adhesive out properly. It also is nice because then the adhesive doesn't stick to your workstation when you're using it. So I'm just going to put a couple of these flowers down at kind of an angle. This one I'm going to trim a little bit because it's a little bit too long. Grab my scissors here and just trim these pieces off so it's a little shorter. And just layer that on there like that. And then I'm going to move on to the rest of the stamping. So we're going to start by stamping the image, the floral image, in smoky slate on my watercolor paper. Now our inks are not watercolor, they're not waterproof, but I like stamping watercolor in smoky slate because it gives it sort of a, it looks almost like a pencil sketch when you do it in gray, like someone sketched out with a pencil, so it gives it kind of a natural look. And then I don't add a lot of water when I water paint. I use very little water, so it doesn't really mute the lines much, and it looks very pretty. If it softens the edges, it's okay, because watercolor would have a softer edge. So I just like the look of it. But you use, if you want a watercolor ink, you're going to want to use our StazOn ink, StazOn Black. Memento doesn't work for watercolor. That's really for alcohol-based inks. We're also going to use the Early Espresso. Now I've cut myself a little sentiment panel in crumb cake, again, to keep it kind of a natural look. And I'm just going to ink that up and stamp that there like that and set that aside. Oh, it's a tiny bit crooked. I'm going to try that again. Oh, much better. Okay. And then we'll set that aside. And then what I did was I brought the rich razzleberry out because I was going to, I thought it would be fun to stamp the envelope. So I'm going to get my envelope here. And I'm going to stamp the flower image in rich razzleberry. And you'll see why in a minute. I'm going to be using my rich razzleberry watercolor pencil to color in the flowers, and so this will help it to coordinate. So now I have this pretty envelope all stamped and ready to go. So now I'm going to pull my project back in here, and what we're going to do is we are going to, I don't need the ink pads anymore, so we're going to pull in the watercolor pencils. Now this little set comes with, let's see, 10, 12 pencils. And I love the watercolor pencils because it makes me feel like an artist, even though I'm not. So all you have to do to use these are really simple to use. I'm going to use the Early Espresso one to color in the little button in the echinacea flower here. I'm just applying a little bit of color here. I'm going to put a little bit of brown on the leaves too, just to make it a little darker. And I'm just going to apply brown where I would like the brown to be. And then I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to soften that color. There's water in the barrel of this water brush, and I'm going to use the brush just to move the color. So I'm not squeezing it. I had already squeezed the brush to get a little bit of water in the tip. You just want there to be some moisture. You don't need it to be super wet. Just a little bit of moisture will really help move that color around, and it just softens up the edges of where you put the pencil lines. It'll just soften the pencil lines. So I'm just pulling that color out. And if you do this on watercolor paper, you don't have to worry about it pilling, which is what I like. I don't like when the paper pills, and it will do that. Sometimes regular cardstock, it will pill. Then just to clean your brush, you just squeeze it a little bit and just kind of wipe it off on your paper, and you can move on to the next color. So I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. I'm gonna move on to the stems, and I'm just adding a little stripe of color on the stems. I don't want to color them in completely because I want there to be a variation of color, and if you put too much color down, it just kind of saturates. So I'm just putting a little, I'm just coloring a little bit, and I'll move this a little closer to the camera so you can see it. But it's very, very easy to use watercolor pencils when you're watercoloring, just like that. And so this is what I've done. I've kind of just made some sketch marks on here. And then I'm going to use my water brush again, just to move that color around and soften the pencil lines. And like I mentioned, sometimes when you're using something like this and you're using a little bit of water in there, it will kind of soften the edges of the stamped image as well, because these are water-based inks after all. And these pencils are beautiful. You don't have to watercolor them. You can use them just as colored pencils and keep the sketch lines if you like them. There we go. That looks nice. Now we're going to move on to the Rich Razzleberry pencil, and I'm just going to color in part of the flower, not the whole thing, just closest to where I want the darkest amount of color, which is typically toward the center for me. I like when the center is a little darker, like that. And then I'm going to again kind of move this color around. And here on this big flower at the top where I've added some brown, it's pretty because it adds a little bit of extra darkness and shading. And then when this dries, you can go back in and add another layer of color if you want. If you see areas that you feel are too light, you can always feel free to go back in and add as much color and fuss with it as much as you like. I'm kind of into the quick and easy, so I don't play with these too much, but I do like how they look. And there are times when I will work on something like this at night and then not finish the card in the morning. If I see a place where I want to add a little extra color, I will before I finish the card. There we go. And that's it. So I'm just kind of moving that color around, and I like that. I think that looks good. So now we're going to die cut this little piece out. So I'm just going to put these supplies to the side. This is definitely worth having in your repertoire if you like to color. This is a fun way to color, fun little coloring medium. So for this, I'm going to use this, the die shape that will cut this out. And I'm just going to lay it over top here. And what I'm basically doing is lining up the stems on the bottom and then making sure that the little buttons at the top are lined up. And I like to use, when I'm doing something as intricate as this, I like to secure it. So I'm going to use some of this little first aid tape that I got at the pharmacy in the first aid area. This is a nice, easy tape. It doesn't stick too hard, but it will hold my die in place. And then we're going to pull the little Stampin' Emboss machine here, Stamp, Cut, and Emboss. This is the baby one. I love this little one. I'm just going to lay it in here and put my plate on it, and then we're going to get it, we'll cut out this nice shape and finish our card. There we go, that's beautiful. Okay, and now we'll bring this back in and we'll finish making our card. So for this, I'm going to use some dimensional adhesive and pop this little piece up. So I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to use some of the pieces on the edge of my dimensionals that are a little bit smaller to try to fit them in here. So I'll use a little half dimensional down near the stem, on the leaves, and then one here. And then I can use a few of the bigger ones for the flowers. And then I'll try and get another little one for right here. And then we'll just remove all the little release papers. And add this to the card base. So I'm just going to layer this to the side so some of these stick out. And that adds such a nice texture. You know, so you've got the background texture and then this other white layer of weeds kind of in the background. And then it focuses right in on what you just watercolored. And when you do it on watercolor paper, there's just something about the look of that that's so artistic and authentic looking. I really love it. So I'm going to add a little bit of dimensional adhesive to the sentiment strip as well. And then I'm just going to lay this on here like that. And then we're going to add some linen thread. So I'm going to tie a bow. Like that. And then just trim it off. And we'll get one of our little glue dots here. I think that linen thread on a natural card is just so pretty because it coordinates with the crumb cake sentiment panel, but it also adds a nice natural touch and just a tiny bit more texture to the card. I'm just going to trim a little bit of that off. Like that. And then I think to finish this one, I was looking through the different gems that I have, and I think I'm going to stick with the elegant faceted gems because I feel like these are soft and very neutral. I'm going to go with the clear, kind of shiny ones. They'll add a nice little shine, but they're not distracting. They won't take away from the simplicity and clean look of this card. They almost look like little water droplets. I love it. Really pretty. That looks good. I like that. What do you guys think? Isn't that fun? What a pretty card. So anyway, just an idea, a new idea for you guys today. Just because it's clean and simple doesn't mean it can't look artistic and beautiful too. So I just wanted to give you an example of using your watercolor pencils with this beautiful bundle, Nature's Harvest Bundle. So I hope you enjoyed the card for today. It looks really pretty with the, if I can find the envelope, it looks beautiful with the envelope, I bet. There we go, just like this. There we go. So thanks again for watching. The host code for August is posted. If you need any supplies, you can shop at kristinevicenti.stampinup.net. Thanks so much for watching today.